Welcome everybody to today's webinar. It's wonderful to see so many people joining us. As Mel Scald said, an international crew. My job today is to kind of get things going and ask some questions afterwards and help us end our time together. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Eric Kaplan. I'm the Vice President and Co-Executive Director with Jeffrey Shine of the Kaplan Center, the Mordechai M. Kaplan Center for Jewish Peoplehood. For those of you who are new to our work, our mission is to disseminate and promote the thought and writings of Rabbi Mordechai M. Kaplan, and to advance the agenda of the Kaplanian approach to Judaism in the 21st century. And clearly an important part for Kaplan of that agenda, and so much of the rationale for this webinar, was how important liturgy was to Rabbi Kaplan. In the introduction to the 1945 prayer book that he wrote with, the introduction is written together with Eugene Cohn. He writes, "Many modern Jews have lost, or all but lost, their sense of need for worship and prayer. Unless this apathy is counteracted, it will spell the end of worship among Jews. And the end of worship means the decay of all spiritual values and the vulgarization of human life." Right? So he then continues, "Since the traditional service has not sufficed to preserve the spirit of worship among Jews, we have found it necessary to explore the possibility of new forms of Jewish liturgical expression." More in line with the Haggadah, which is the topic of our conversation, Kaplan's Haggadah, also written together with Eugene Cohn and Ira Eisenstein, was being put together during the years in which Hitler rose to power and then the start of World War II, and it was eventually published in 1941. And in the introduction to his new Haggadah, he writes, "Times have changed. We live in a new world. We are confronted with new conditions, but the problem is still the same. That problem is how, in the face of setbacks and despite the demagogic appeals of false prophets, to keep alive in men the love of freedom and their faith in it. That is why the Pesach Haggadah has assumed once again a major role in the lives of Jews. It has a message that is fraught with power and beauty. It needs only to be transposed into a new key, into the key of modern thought, modern experiences, and modern idiom. The language and the concepts of the ancient rite need to be revised so that they go straight to the minds and hearts of the men and women of today." And this project of translating liturgy into a new key so that it will go straight to the minds and hearts of men and women of today that Kaplan is talking about is, I think, definitely at the center of Dr. Marcia Falk's work. As many of you know, in addition to the Passover Haggadah that she has just published, she has also published wonderful liturgies for Sabbath and festivals, as well as for the high holidays. And I first encountered her work in this symposium here, which you won't see it well here, but I think it says a lot about the power of the work of Dr. Falk, that in the December 1987 issue of The Reconstructionist, she wrote an essay called "Notes on Composing New Blessings Towards a Feminist Jewish Reconstruction of Prayer." Then, about 2 issues later in The Reconstructionist, there's this symposium which is introduced by saying, "Marcia Falk's article, New Blessings, has led to considerable discussion among our readers. Many of the letters we have received, as well as Falk's response to them, appear in this issue's correspondence section. But they decided to give to Ed Greenstein, David Ellenson, Ruth Sohn, and David Teutsch the opportunity themselves to respond to Marcia's work. And you would think that that would be the end of the story, but here are 3 other issues of the Reconstructionists that come afterwards that also have a continuing dialogue about Marcia's work. And it's a very crowded space out there, and I don't think there are very many thinkers and liturgists out there that captures people's attentions and minds and hearts to the degree that Marcia Falk has done. So it's really a tremendous pleasure to have her with us. I just want to say 2 other quick things. Somebody who shared both Marcia and Kaplan's strong interest and commitment to Jewish liturgy is Dan Cederbaum. As many of you know, Dan was the founder and executive director of the Kaplan Center, and he passed away on July 2nd of 2021. He is the person who initiated the conversation with Marcia that led to the Kaplan Center being involved in the cost of producing this particular book. And I have him very strongly on my mind this afternoon, as because none of this wouldn't have happened without his initiative. And it is very sad that he's not here to take part in this session. The way we're going to do things is I'm now going to turn things over to Marcia. She's going to share her screen with you, and she's going to give a presentation on her work. I will then have the pleasure of asking her a number of questions, and then we will open it up to the questions that are in the chat, the questions and comments in the chat. So I encourage you to use the chat function to place your thoughts in it. And our friend and colleague, Rabbi Jeffrey Eisenstadt, is the one who's monitoring the chat for us and will collate the questions and ask them to Marcia on your behalf. So I am going to mute myself and allow Marcia to share her screen.
Eric, you always give me so much to live up to. I sometimes feel like I should not let you introduce me because it just makes me nervous. Now I have to live up to this great introduction, but thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to dialogue with you, Eric. You're a great mind, you really are. Eric's a Jewish liturgy expert. He's one of the best we've got, and I really appreciate him conversing with me about this. It's great to see everybody here. I guess there's a lot of people here. Wow. I will not be looking at the chat during the presentation, so Jeff Eisenstadt will be checking it and asking me questions, so I may not, I won't be able to address you directly because I'll be talking and thinking. What I wanted to do with you this afternoon is to read and discuss a bit from Mah Haggadah, and which has been in the making for a few decades. And I thought I'd start by just telling you how it came to be and then move on to showing you. I started writing brachot, blessings, for the Pesach Seder several decades ago for my own Seder at home, because as those of you who know my work know, I don't use the traditional brachot in my personal life. I can't, and I won't go into my whole theology or a theology, whichever it is right now, but most of you who are familiar with my work know that it's about finding another language and another concept of the sacred, that we can, those of us who don't feel comfortable with the Lord and the King, can still use to share our attachment to Jewish civilization with the whole Am Yisrael. In other words, I try to write my blessings in such a way that they connect with tradition, that their source is always tradition, usually starting with Tanakh, Hebrew Bible, but then try to express things with a new vision. So that sums up what I'm all about in general. What I'm about in this Haggadah was that I started many years ago writing blessings for our home Seder. And I really never, ever intended to write a whole Haggadah, never intended. There's somebody here today, my wonderful Nancy Augustus, whose face is not on the screen, so I'm free to embarrass her, who encouraged me over the years to create a Haggadah, encouraged in every way, in all the ways that writers need to be supported and encouraged. And I thank Nancy, and if you enjoyed the Haggadah, you also owe a great debt of gratitude to Nancy. So finally I said, okay, well, since I wrote blessings, now I'll just expand on them a little bit by writing what I call kavanot. My kavanot are kind of a prose poems in a meditative voice that open up, I hope, the blessings to a more personal, inviting you to enter them in a personal way. And, after I had written all of that, I thought, okay, Nancy, I'll try to do the rest. And so the three elements of my Haggadah that are innovative, because why a new Haggadah? There's a million out there probably. So the three major innovative elements are the brachot, which are the blessings, which are very different from the traditional ones, the kavanot, which don't exist it's a new genre. But a main element is the magid, the telling of the biblical story, the story from Shmot, from Exodus, that tells our liberation from Mitzrayim, from Egypt. That story, which of course is the foundation of the holiday, in the traditional Haggadah appears only in bits and snatches. What we really get in the traditional Haggadah is lots of rabbinic anecdotes telling us what the rabbis thought about this holiday and how we should observe it. But we do not get a continuous narrative of the story. I mean, of the first 15 chapters of the book of Exodus, which is the source of the holiday. So what I did, and I will read you a snippet of it, was to go back to the text, to compress it, but not leave anything out, and to present it in the Haggadah with my, I would call it literary commentary on the side. That is to say, a close reading of the text, as a piece of literature in bold print on the side of the, so it's a kind of side by side, but you can read the text all by itself and you've got it there and nothing interrupts it. And I consider that to be, and it wasn't easy, by the way, compressing the 15 chapters of the book of Exodus. I entered it very naively thinking, oh, I could just, it's, the way we write things in Tanakh, it's not a straight line. So there's all this stuff that had to be made clear. Anyway, what I'm now going to do is share my screen, which I hope I do properly. Give me a moment here. I hope this works. Oops, I'm on the wrong page, but I think the screen will. Can you all see
Yes.
me?
Yeah. Yeah. The screen
Okay.
share is working.
Can you enlarge the print a little bit for me?
No, I can't.
Oh,
I have
okay,
no way to do that.
okay.
Sorry. If you have the book there, that it might be easier to follow along probably than.
I wish I did, but I don't, but it's
Okay.
okay.
If anybody wants, I could say what the page number is in the book, but no, I don't have any way of enlarging it. Sorry. Okay, so this is Laila Shel Hatchalot, Night of Beginnings. I'm going to just scroll through pages to get to the pages I want to read, so forgive me for zipping through like this.
Marcia, it would help for those of us who have the book if you would let us know the page
Okay,
number when you get there.
sure. Yes, I will do that. I have trouble reading stuff on screen too. I totally understand that. Okay. Sorry, I'm doing a whole bunch of presentations this month, but this is the first one. So if I'm a little slow with the technology, you'll forgive me, I hope. Can you all see the whole screen, or is it interrupted by anything, or can you see it? I'm on
It's fine.
We see it.
Great. I'm on page 30 in the book, and what you are looking at is the blessing for Karpas, which, as of course you know, is early in the Seder. We make a bracha, a blessing on spring greens. Often people use parsley, but it doesn't have to be parsley. It can be any spring green. And let me get the, whoops, sorry. This moves too quickly. Why? Oh, I see what it's doing. Oh, well. You can see the whole thing? Because actually I can't.
Yes, I can.
Well, I'm glad you can. I have to open up the book here. My screen has something about sharing at the bottom. I will get this all worked out. Okay, so as you know, of course, one of the names for Pesach, one of the biblical names, there are 4 biblical names for Pesach, and one of them is Chag HaAviv, the holiday of spring. And the bracha for Karpas reads, Tfilat Karpas va'achilato, Hagef, and it opens, every bracha in the Haggadah opens with a little biblical epigraph. And Eric will later ask me why. I won't take the time to do that now. Hagefen titen pirya, v'haaretz titen et yivula, v'hashamayim yitnu talam. B'chag ha'aviv hazeh nekabel et pnei hashana unvarech et hamayan hameorer et prichat haaretz. The vine shall give forth its fruit, the earth will yield its harvest, and the skies shall provide their dew. At this festival of spring, as we welcome the newly budding year, let us bless the source that awakens the greening of the earth. I wanted here in this bracha to pull together the newness of spring with the fact that it is in fact a new year biblically. And frankly, many of us feel much more like this is the time for a new year rather than the fall when everything seems to be closing down. But okay, so we have 2 new years. Now I'm going to read you the Kavanah, which I explain what that is. that accompanies this blessing, and that is on page 33. Why is this scrolling so fast? Here it is. It's called Spring, the Birth of the Year. We measure time in lines, forward and back. The story we recount at the Seder table brings us back to ancient times. After years of enslavement, we leave Egypt to begin our journey to the promised land. At the same Seder, we look to the future, to a time when the world will be redeemed and all will be free. And we also measure time in cycles, birthdays and memorial days, monthly and yearly holidays, the weekly return of the Sabbath, spring and fall, and spring again. We count the cycles not from beginning to end, but from beginning to beginning. Season begets season, month begets month, day begets day without pause. So Pesach comes and goes each year, always bringing with it something new. Although the narrative we tell is the same, the way we view and understand it changes each time we tell it. And each spring, each Pesach season, we encounter newness in the world around us and within us, new births, new blossoming, new beginnings. I want to read you another kavanah, which accompanies a little action from the Seder that has no bracha, it has no blessing, and that's yachatz, the breaking of the matzah at the beginning, close to the beginning of the Seder, when the leader takes it, breaks it, puts aside what will become the afikomen, and puts back the other half. So let me get to the kavanah, which is on page 47. I will scroll through now to get to page 47. The colors that you're seeing, by the way, as I scroll through, each one represents a different genre in the book. So every kavanah is on a blue page, every bracha is on it. I like to think of these as fruits on an apricot colored page. The kavanot are on blueberry pages. When we get to the Magid, that's on sage green. Here is the kavanah for yachatz. It's brokenness and wholeness. Excuse me. Loss, suffering, hopelessness, broken spirit, broken self. Our lives are broken off by death. The human condition is brokenness. But there is also another kind of breaking, the breaking open of the heart that puts us in touch with our deeper selves, and that may even serve as a gateway to wholeness. What is wholeness of self? Does it depend on outer connections, bonds between self and other, between self and world? Is it the feeling that one is part of a greater whole? Or is it an interconnectedness, an awareness, a knowingness sustained from within, a bringing forth to consciousness the hidden parts of the self? And might this deepened consciousness offer a path to freedom? Or is wholeness all these things and perhaps more? We dwell in a world of brokenness, but we yearn and strive for wholeness. It is elusive, but it is our birthright. The pursuit of wholeness is the human calling. And reading this today, I can't help but think of what is going on at this very moment. The broken off lives in the Ukraine. It's so shocking, there are no words. But we pursue wholeness, we persist. hopefully we will succeed in putting an end to this monstrosity. I am going to turn now to the section in the Haggadah for the 4 children, and traditionally, of course, the 4 sons. As I turn to it, let's see, what page is it? 54. Whoops. Come on. On these pages, I just summarize what the rabbis have to say about the 4 sons, and I am not going to read this to you now because most of you probably know this. There's a wise son. With the rabbis, it's always sons, not daughters. So they speak of the wise son who asks for information, the wicked son who says, what does the holiday mean to you? Which the rabbis view as meaning to you and not to himself. The simple son who asks a simple question. It sounds like they think he's stupid, and the son who does not know how to ask. And what I've done here is revisioned what these 4 children might be living inside of us, in each of us, all 4 children in each of us, rather than 4 children out there in the world. They're out in the world, but they're also inside us. So this is my understanding, or at the moment, my vision of what these 4 children are, who they are. 4 children dwell within us. I'm sorry, did I give the page number? It's 56. The 4 children dwell within us. The child who wants to know. The child who wants to know has an inquisitive mind and an open heart. When she asks what and how, she wants to hear the whole story. To this child, you give full answers because nothing less will do. When you don't know what to say, you keep looking. This child brings you the world. The child who feels apart and alone. There is another child who is hungry for truth, but of a different kind. He wants to know more about you. He asks what this holiday means to you. This child too is studying the world, your world. He is trying to find himself in you, through you. Don't turn him away. Let him cross your borders. He will bring you insight and surprise. The simple child. The simple child asks the question that goes straight to the heart, stripping away pretense and complication. What is this? They ask. When the other children have finished their questioning, the simple child persists, asking, why? The simple child's question may be the most difficult one to answer. Nevertheless, try. This is the child who moves us on. This is the one who will change the world. And then the child who cannot ask. And then there is the child who cannot ask. She is cloaked in wonder. Her voice is silence. She is who we were once, before. She hasn't left us, but she is often hidden, and we find her at unpredictable times. We cannot call this child to us with words. She comes unbidden, and when she comes, the world reveals itself suffused in beauty, beauty of which we are a part. Bless this moment, bless this child, nothing more to do. Blessed be the child beyond all questions. Okay. I'm looking at my notes and looking at the time. Give me a second to decide what it is I want to eliminate, because there's always too much. Well, the next section I would like to read to you from is Halachma, Halachma Anya. Um, um, this is the bread of affliction, and that begins on page 63. Oops. Well, on page 63, I will just read you the last paragraph from this introduction to Halachma. Just for the sake of time, I'm only going to read the last paragraph because it'll give you an idea of what I am focusing on in this very well-known piece of the Haggadah, Halachma Anya. What most moves me about this traditional reading is let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who are in need share our Pesach. Opening the door as we do metaphorically when we recite Halachma, excuse me, makes porous the border between inner and outer, between our lives and the lives of others, between ourselves and the greater whole of being. We open the door and we open our hearts, fulfilling the commandment to empathize with those who are strangers to us. From Book of Shemot, Exodus, you shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the feelings of a stranger, having yourself been strangers in the land of Egypt. My kavanah for Halachma, which is, I'm skipping Halachma itself now. The only change, Halachma, of course, is in Aramaic, and the only changes I made to that text was with the help of an Aramaic scholar who helped me bring in, make the grammar a little bit more gender inclusive. But other than that, I brought in the women as well, the fathers as well as the mothers in the end. But other than that, I didn't make many changes to this. Here's the kavanah, though, on page 66 and page 67. It's a home that is open to all, the sacred promise of the United States. A promise that we are clearly not fulfilling today. Excuse me for 1 second. There we go. So for this kavanah, what I've done is borrowed the beautiful sonnet from Emma Lazarus, who was an American Sephardic Jew, wealthy, from a wealthy family herself, but who actually did a lot of work on behalf of the poor and Jewish immigrants fleeing Russian pogroms. So everything that comes around again, I guess. I'm not going to read the whole sonnet. It's a beautiful sonnet. You probably know it well because it appears on the Statue of Liberty. I will just read the last 5 lines to remind us of what we should be remembering every day. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. You can never read that poem enough. If only all the people, well, you know, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, so I'll move on. I'm going to now skip ahead and read you. As you can see, as I scroll through, there are poems in here. There are, here in green is the Magid. And I am going to go to pages, hang on with me for a second, 84 and 85. This is the portion of the story right at the beginning where Bat Paro, the Pharaoh's daughter, spies the basket that Moshe is in, the baby Moshe, who's been hidden in the river in the reeds by his mother and watched over by his sister, Miriam. We never find out the name of Moshe's mother or of Pharaoh's daughter, who becomes Moshe's adoptive mother. But that's a whole story in itself, who is named and who is nameless in this story, in the biblical story, and what their different roles are. So if you look at page 84 toward the top, I don't know how much time I have to read. I'm actually going to skip reading. So what you see in the bold are my comments on the text, which is in the regular text. And I'm going to actually skip the regular text from Tanakh, because I just told you what that story is, and you know it already, of course, because you know that Moshe was hidden in the reeds. And I will just read you a little bit of the commentary. In acting to save the baby's life, Pharaoh's daughter is unique in the Bible. She takes in a child who is not of her people and raises him as her own. Hers is an act of great compassion that also constitutes a rebellion against authority. In saving the Hebrew child, she defies the orders of her father, who is both king and God to the Egyptians. Despite her remarkable action, Pharaoh's daughter's name is withheld from us. And unlike Miriam, who will be called by name at the apex of the story, she remains nameless to the end. Indeed, we will not hear any more about Pharaoh's daughter in the book of Exodus, despite the large part we might assume an adoptive mother would have played in the development of Moshe's character. As we have seen, if we've read the story up till now, because we're now in the middle of it, as we have seen, the empathetic acts of all the women in the story exemplify an ethic of care. While the biblical narrative focuses on the male characters, the fate of the Hebrews is equally dependent on the less elaborated acts of the women. As Rabbi Avira expounded, Israel was redeemed from Egypt on account of the righteous women of that generation. So that's just a snippet of the Magid here. And the Magid is followed, the very end of the Magid is Miriam and the women dancing, singing and dancing, which felt to me like the proper place to bring in Kos Miriam, Miriam's cup. Many people these days have not just Elijah's cup on the table, but Miriam's cup. And I have placed Miriam's cup right after the Magid, because it's the very end of the Magid where we celebrate Miriam's contribution. Now, the rabbis attributed to Miriam the well that moved through the desert with us as we made our long trek from Egypt to the promised land. that well of water that sustained us. So I felt that the blessing from Miriam's cup should be a celebration of the waters, the essential element of our lives, and especially if you think back to biblical times and the Middle East in general, even today, water, water, water. It's all about water. So, Vatikach Miriam Hanevia Achot Aharon et Hatof Biada Vatitzena Kol Anashim Achareha Betupim Uvim Cholot Sham'a Vatismach Tzion Vatagelna Benot Yehuda Nevarech et me ha'ayanot ume hanchalim ume hanharot Maim Chaim Hamarvim Kol Chai. Miriam the prophet, this of course is the biblical epigraph. Miriam the prophet, sister of Aaron, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her, dancing with timbrels. Zion heard and was happy. The daughters of Judah rejoiced. Let us bless the living waters, fountains and well springs, rivulets, rivers and streams that sustain all life. I'm going to mute myself for a second so that I can close the door and make it even more quiet in here. Excuse me for a second.
While Marcia's closing the door, I encourage you to put your questions and comments in the chat, and that's where Jeffrey will get them from and post them to Marcia.
I am back. I'm back. Let's see, how did we get to Diana? Did someone turn the page for me, or did I do that? Did you do that? You couldn't have done that, Eric. Oh, here's Miriam's cup, and it's skip so that Eric has time to ask me questions. But I do want to read just a couple more things. Eric, let me ask you, I would, okay, I'm going to read 3 more little pieces, okay? 3 more little pieces. What did I do with Dayenu? What does one do with Dayenu? It's this rousing little drinking song that we sing at every Seder. And what does it really mean? It would have been enough. It would have been. What does enough mean? What is enough about for us? And here's one of those places. I will skip this. This is a poem about this sense of it being enough. I can come back to that later if there's time. But what does it mean for our lives to have enough? The Kavanah on page 113. What is enough? We begin as nothing and we end as nothing, and in between everything and nothing. In between joy and sorrow, beauty and decay, everything ours to partake of, ours to bear, ours to see, to know, to give birth to, and to let go. None of it ours to have. Not even ourselves are ours to have. We belong to a wholeness so great we cannot even conceive of it. No, it is not a belonging. Nothing owns us. We are simply part of it. We came out of it and we will return to it. We do not ever leave it. We are part of it forever. And is this not enough? More than enough? And I am going to turn now. Oh, you know what? I'm just, for this, to save time, I'll let Eric ask his questions. I'm going to read one more thing and skip everything else, and that would be on page 168. I wrote something here for Nirtza. Nirtza is that thing that we conclude the Seder with, and it's just that little saying, we fulfilled everything we're supposed to fulfill, and the Seder is over. And I thought, we need something more at this moment. And so my Nirtza is a blessing of fruitfulness. Birkat HaGefen Ufirya, and it begins with the epigraph from Sefer Dvarim. V'natati mitar atzechem b'ito yoreh umalkosh ve'asafta ganecha v'tiroshcha v'yitzhar. Can never pronounce this. V'yitzharecha. Al eretz chemda v'shefa, al tnuvat hasadeh, al zera, al gefen v'nitzan, al perach ufiryo, al anavim ve'al hayayin, al hamasa me'avdut lecherut v'leshlemut, reishit chayenu kivnot uchivnei chorim, nodeh u'varech. Blessing of fruitfulness. I will provide the rain for your land in its seasons, the early rain and the late. You shall gather in your new grain and young wine and glowing oil. For the bountiful earth, excuse me, I have to open the book myself. Sorry. For the bountiful earth, for the plenty of the field, for seed to vine to bud, for flower to fruit, for grape to wine, for the opening of our lives from enslavement to freedom to fruition, we give thanks. And I think I will stop sharing my screen now and let Eric take over.
Thank you, Marcia.
I have not stopped, though. Have I stopped? Because I'm still seeing the book.
Yeah, no, you're still sharing the screen.
Oh, I clicked on stop share. Oh,
There you go.
I didn't click hard
There
enough.
you go.
Okay. Do that.
So thank you so much for your tour through the Haggadah. I'm keeping an eye on the chat myself, and there's a lot of questions there about about particular parts of the Haggadah and what you did with them. So I'm going to ask my 2 or 3 questions on kind of more global issues, and then turn things over to Jeffrey to give you the questions from the chat. So the first thing I want to ask you about was the whole question of language, very specifically the Hebrew language. One of the things that sticks out about your work is that while there's quite a lot of contemporary liturgy being written in North America, there isn't a lot of contemporary liturgy that's being written in Hebrew. And you're writing in Hebrew, probably being read primarily by liberal Jews who have some command of Hebrew, but don't have the command of biblical Hebrew that you have. But in addition to writing your blessings in Hebrew, you also transliterate those new blessings. And you also transliterate, complex pieces of Hebrew, such as the the selections from Shira Shirim that somebody might have caught as you were scrolling through. So I was wondering if you could say something about your relation to Hebrew and why it's been so significant and such a central part of your liturgical work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is essential. It's a very important part. I do want to mention, though, that that in Israel, people have started writing new liturgy in Hebrew. But and I've actually been involved with some of that. There's a number of different new sidurim in Israel, but there's actually not. It's just at the beginning. We're just still talking mostly about tweaking rather than composing a lot of new stuff. But it'll happen more in Israel. But your question is more to the point of why am I an American Jew who's basically going to be read by mostly American Jews, although I'm really touched to see that some of my work has been adopted by Israeli Jews and put into these new sidurim. So I feel very honored by that. Why did I write in Hebrew? And it's all about our civilization, Kaplanians, all of you. It's all, what are we without Hebrew? Hebrew, it's the essence of our civilization as Jews. And if we do not keep it alive, not just in Israel, but in Galut, we shrivel, we dissipate, we lose our heritage. I mean, every time I give a talk, I do this, I nudge people to death about teach your kids Hebrew, even if you don't know Hebrew, send them to Hebrew day school or get them a Hebrew tutor or send them to Israel or to summer camp. If we lose Hebrew, we lose the core of our civilization. Now, before I started writing all this liturgy in Hebrew, no, it hadn't been done here in North America or anywhere in Galut, as far as I'm aware. Like I say, there was tweaking, there was bringing in the imahot, adding the prayers were tweaked. But new liturgical creativity, such as, we've had in Hebrew over the centuries, but became ossified in about the 19th century. We haven't had it. And so I just felt there was no reason for me to write a book only in English. We had lots of books in English. This was what was important to me. And I could go on for too long about this, and I get very passionate and stirred up, so I'll stop.
When you started this work, did you have the Hebrew skills to do this, or did you have to, do a lot of, learning of biblical and rabbinic Hebrew to begin to do this type of work?
I have the skills that I have now. That is to say, I had a hearty Jewish education as a child and an adolescent and a young adult, and I've tried to keep it up. I don't think I have enough Hebrew to do this well. I think, first of all, I always run everything by my experts, Yair Zakovich, who is the former dean of the Hebrew University, chair of the Bible department. He reviews everything I write, make sure I don't mess anything up and do it. And Yair is also a poet, so I get the benefit of his poetic sense. It's not my first language. It's not it's not my mother tongue, but I've always felt like Hebrew was the language of my heart, of my neshama. And I mean, I wouldn't have started the project, Eric, if I had to first learn Hebrew and first learn Tanakh and Talmud. I wouldn't have started. But I hope I keep learning all the time. I hope so.
For sure. So one thing, another thing that I think everybody saw as you were scrolling is there's a like an overarching theme to the artwork that you've included, and there's these gorgeous flowers. Um, the thing that a lot of Haggadot will have more situational specific artwork, such as like next to halachma, they'll have matzah, or they'll have a door opening next to Eliyahu, they'll have a door opening next, they will kind of do artwork that's more attached to the specific, content of a particular page. But you've chosen to go with one motif and to develop it and throughout the book. So I'm wondering if you could say something about the thinking behind the artwork that you included and how you settled on the motif of flowers, and if you considered drawing pyramids and things like that and rejected, or that was something that was never in your mind.
I would never draw pyramids, okay? And I wouldn't draw matzot or young boys with kippot on their heads, or women benching licht, I wouldn't do that. Okay, we have seen so much of that. And let's face it, it's kind of hackneyed, right? Why did I draw flowers? It's the holiday of spring. And the book is called Night of Beginnings. This holiday for me is all about newness. It's all about opening up and flowering. We have emerged from slavery. We are moving toward the opening of ourselves, toward a life of freedom. What expresses that better than the natural world, the world of opening, the world of spring flowers? And anyway, I love all my art has to do with nature. I mean, it just all does. I mean, I used to work from the model and do human beings too. That's nature also, but I would never draw a pyramid. So that's the answer to your question.
Plus a lot of your...
Don't you find the artwork in the traditional Haggadah a little hackneyed? I mean, between you and me.
It's not between you and me, where there's 80 people here and it's being recorded. But
how many people have I offended so far?
well, based on the chat, it doesn't seem like you have offended anyone. But I do think there's a high aesthetic value to your Haggadah and a unity of aesthetic that I do think is somewhat unique, and it's one of the beautiful elements to it. The last question that I'm going to ask, that I'll ask for you at this time, has to do with, in the kavanah that you showed us early on brokenness and wholeness. Basically, there you introduce kind of the two major pathways in which contemporary Jews have interacted with the Haggadah. You have kind of the personal, psychological interpretation and of what wholeness means, of what freedom means, and then you put right next to it, in addition, the more outwardly focused, social, outwardly focused social justice message. And in the Haggadah, both of these themes, show up pretty much with equal strength, I think. Your Haggadah both speaks a strong social justice message and also a strong kind of, self-reflection voice as well. But the thing that struck me about the social justice element of it is that you approach it with a very light touch, right? Especially in comparison with other social justice tinged Haggadot. So if we go back, for example, to the piece that you showed us from the New Colossus, you didn't read it, but the one line that you have underneath the poem is, "May we commit to bringing this promise to fulfillment in our time." Now, in so many contemporary Haggadot, there would then be a more kind of programmatic continuation, you know, by doing boom, 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 or giving addresses of people that you can contact and this type of thing. But throughout, there's really no place in the Haggadah where you've taken that approach. So just a couple, just on the page after that, on the Kavanah, freedom, and the lives of others, you ask some very, very big questions that, you know, such as there is an even greater contrast between the freedoms available to some of us living as citizens in the developed world and the freedoms that are available or denied to so many others. How many in the world are suffering enslavement, oppression, dehumanization? How much does our freedom depend on the lives of others? Right, kind of core questions. But again, there's not that programmatic bottom line of when you say, okay, so now I want you to do this, or I want you to read this or think this. Could you say a bit about how you envision the social justice component of this book?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're quite right, and thank you for pointing out what you see. First of all, it's a book of poetry. Okay, I'm a poet. None of my work is a letter to the editor of the New York Times or an op-ed column. I try to stir people's hearts as well as their minds. I'm not interested in being didactic. A book of liturgy should touch us enough that we come up with the programs. I don't want to come up first. I want this book to last. Suppose I were to write the book today and put donate money to the Ukrainians. Well, I mean, there's going to be more catastrophes after today, and that will already be outdated. I mean, to go into these specifics that Haggadot do, you can never be specific enough. It would go on forever. You'd have to write volumes to talk about everything we could do for social justice in the world. That is not the point, in my opinion, of a book of prayer. A book of prayer should stir us to do things, but not figure it all out for us. I never, as a poet, my own poetry is never didactic in that way. I'm just not moved to write that kind of thing.
So I think your emphasis, and you write that in the introduction, that this is a poet's Haggadah, and I hope that that's one of the takeaways from the reading that you've done for the people who are on the session, that the text is very beautifully written, and that the poetry has a lot of those same nature imagery that you see on the page, and that the writing is very sparse, but in the poetry, the writing is very sparse, but very, very suggestive. I'm going to turn things over now to Jeffrey, but before I do, I just want to point out that on the Kaplan Center website, kaplancenter.org, we have an abridged version of the introduction to Marcia's Haggadah that you can see. But also right on top of that, there are discount codes that can be used up until April 30th to order copies of the Haggadah at single copies at a 40% discount and over 10 at a 50% discount. That applies to the United States and Canada and is available, as I said, until April 30th. So you can get that just at kaplancenter.org. So I'm going to mute myself, and Jeff, can you unmute yourself and share with us some of the material from the chat?
Sure. Thank you, Eric, and Marcia, thank you so much. So let me build on some of the themes that came up already. And the first one was, you have many people who praise you because of your work in the Israeli Reform Siddur and how the importance of Hebrew, the poetry that you're writing is so very important. So one of the Hebrew issues that came up in the chat was under Chag HaAviv, the festival of spring, with pricha, the question was, why did you choose that as the greening rather than the blossoming? And, it's so, how about that for a first one?
Oh, gosh. Can I be uppity and say, you don't ask poets that question?
Of course,
I
you
hope
can be
the
uppity.
greening implied blossoming. I wanted, the association with green, the green vegetables that we eat for karpas. What exactly do I say? Remind me of, where's my book? What page is it on?
Oh, yeah, no, I don't have it in front of me. It was,
Okay, wait, let me look and see what I did.
So while you're looking that up,
in Hebrew, it's prichat haaretz, and
Prichat
in English,
haaretz.
it's the greening of the earth.
Right.
Well, here's the thing. When you write I never, my Hebrew and English are never translations one of the other. They're always parallel, because they come out of two different literary traditions, right? I mean, in English, I inherited Shakespeare through Keats to Whitman, and in Hebrew, Tanakh down through, the Paitanim down to poetry today, right? Two different streams. So they're not translations one of the other, they're parallel. And what came to me in Hebrew was prichat haaretz. It's kind of the same idea as the greening of the earth. I just kind of said it differently in English than in Hebrew. You got to allow me that freedom.
Absolutely.
That's who I am.
You have the freedom. You have the freedom. These are just the questions. So while you're talking about freedom, talk about why you chose the color coding again. Why the specific colors for different things in the Haggadah?
Well, early on, I thought one thing structurally that this Haggadah does that the other Haggadah don't do is make it clear what the structure of the Haggadah is. I mean, the traditional Haggadah and even the new ones, they're kind of a mishmash, and I wanted it to be clear. Well, here's the Magid. This part is the story. And here are the various brachot that you will come upon. And here's, maybe all you want to use in the book are the blessings and the Magid. Maybe you don't have time for the kavanot. And then there's little section from Shir HaShirim, my favorite biblical text, because you read Song of Songs on Pesach, and that gets its own color. Maybe you won't use that at all. Or maybe you will. Maybe you'll use it for karpas, but maybe you'll save it for Pesach. I mean, for Shabbat of Pesach. So I assigned to each genre a different color. We got raspberries or strawberries, I can't remember which. We got blueberries. We got apricots and peaches and sage. It's a holiday in which you eat. So I decided to make the colors food colors. Fruit colors. And I thought it would help in using the book. I mean, first of all, of course, it was an aesthetic decision too, because instead of cluttering up the pages with a lot of this stuff, I thought, well, it'd be just nice to have, to look at some colors. But I thought it would also be helpful to be able to flip through the book and find, oh, here's the green section. It's all the Magid. And let me look at all the blue pages, because I'm interested in seeing what the kavanot are in this book. I mean, and I thought it would be fun. And I thought it makes a pretty book.
It does. And the pastels are beautiful. So thank you. So while you're going through the book, would you open up to Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim? Because one of the social justice questions that came out of it was you have Shel Tzedek and there's others. So why did you choose Lashana Haba Habanuya? Why did you choose your ending for the Haggadah?
Well, I certainly wasn't going to say Yerushalayim Habanuya, because the last thing I want to see is another temple, Right. So that wasn't going to be it. It's conventional to say Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim. But I think that's really not completely honest, because most of us here in North America do not intend to make Aliyah. What is it we're wishing for? I mean, I would love to, but it's probably not going to happen in my lifetime. So it's a false toast, or, so what is it I would really like to see next year? I would like to see a Yerushalayim of tzedek, justice, shalom, peace, and achava. Brotherliness, sisterliness, harmony is how you translated it in English. Did I? Yeah. Anyway, that was actually a no-brainer for me. That was one of the easiest decisions I made in the book.
Great. So easy decisions, but you one of the comments was that you did not include Shvo Chamatcha.
Oh,
and
well, that was an even easier decision.
that was a no-brainer too.
That was a no-brainer.
Would you just say why why for yourself? Shvo Chamatcha explanation is, before we would open the door for Elijah, there would be this this pour out your wrath, God, upon those who have tried to do us evil. So obviously Marcia chose not to include that.
Well, there's plenty I didn't include, as you know, because as I said, I wasn't dealing with all the rabbinic texts. In fact, very little. I chose carefully what from the rabbinic sensibility I wanted to highlight, and I did throughout. What the rabbis had to say about Miriam, what they had to say about the destruction of the Egyptians, that wonderful midrash that people only know part of, the one about God crying, don't celebrate at the drowning of the Egyptians, they're my people too. It actually goes on. It's a longer midrash. You have to read it. It's much more interesting than that. It's very complex. I don't know that I have time to talk about it now. I will later if you want. But anyway, so most of the rabbinic stuff I left out. The no-brainerest of them all was Shvo Chamatcha. Do I really want to bring into my celebration of springtime, of freedom, of pour out your wrath, God? First of all, I don't believe in that kind of God. I mean, I don't believe in, the transcendental God. I don't talk to him. There's no him. There's no talking to. So why, of all things, why would I stop and talk to God and say, pour out your wrath? I mean, come on. I don't know.
So, okay, so we get that. So another question that came up was, after all these years of writing poetry and doing artwork and creating something that's really important to you, why dafka did you choose to publish it right now? What happened, for you that was the culmination of really putting this all together?
What do you mean? Why did I choose to publish?
Because you said initially, you said that you've been doing this for decades, writing this. So how did you come to the realization that it's time for Marcia Falk to put this down?
No, when I finished it, it just took a long time to finish it. Listen, anybody out there who wants to publish or support the publishing of any of my books, I'll be happy to send you finished manuscripts. I don't decide to publish. It's basically these days, it's the publisher that decides if they want to publish you, or if the Kaplan Foundation, Kaplan Center wants to support the Jewish Publication Society so that they can publish me. I didn't decide anything. I just finished the work.
You just did it. Okay.
Yeah.
So Mel Sculpt had a comment. So let me turn it now to Mel.
I just have enjoyed this so enormously. I've shared that with Marshall. Marcia. A couple of thoughts. I thought in terms of the title, Marcia, that I would call it a night of discovery. A night of discovery. There are so many ideas that the text and your comments and your poetry engender in me. It's a revelation. It's so wonderful. And Kaplan, who was hovering in the background, talked about the Haggadah as a teaching mechanism. And that's really what it does. It teaches because it suggests so many new ways of looking at things. And that's why I think it's so wonderful. And I hope parents will use it that way when they have their own seders. The other thing is that Eric and others have noticed this comment on yachatz and wholeness. Well, the concept of shleimut, which is wholeness, is central to Kaplan. And I've been trying for a very long time to get people to understand that when Kaplan talks about salvation, which is central to his whole philosophy, we should understand wholeness and shleimut. The point is that he discovered in the Musaf of the Regalim the following statement about God, Atah Shalom v'Shimcha Shalom. And that's the basis on which he said we should say that salvation means peace, and that means shleimut. There's a Kaplan sort of hovering there in the background. The last thing I want to mention is my philosophy of Dayenu. I have an attitude towards life, and I want to say, if I heard about the Haggadah but didn't order it, Dayenu. If I ordered it but it didn't come to my house, Dayenu. Dayenu. So that's my philosophy.
Well,
Thank you.
I want to say, Mel, as you know, I learned a lot from you, a lot. And probably most of what I know about Kaplan, I mean, Mel has been my Kaplan teacher. So I didn't know I was a Kaplanian originally when I started doing my liturgy. It was Rabbi Ira Eisenstein and his wife Judith, who told me I was a Kaplanian. And then I started studying Kaplan because apparently I was a Kaplanian. I better understand what I was. And Mel has been tremendous and dialoguing with me and sending me his articles. And if you want to learn about Kaplan, Mel has 3 books, diaries that he's put together of Mordecai Kaplan's work from his diaries. And if you want to say what the names of the books are, Mel, I've forgotten.
Well, one is called The Radical American Judaism of Mordecai Kaplan, which deals with his thought and is published by Indiana University Press. And the other is a biography of Kaplan, which is published by Wayne State. And then there are 3 volumes of selections from Kaplan called Communings of the Spirit. Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you.
I just want to say that for my money, that you are 1000% Kaplanian. It's really, no. It really amazes me that I could write a commentary from Kaplan on this Haggadah. And it's just absolutely amazing. And there's a nice kind of continuity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you. Are there more questions, Jeff? Or do you want to ask more, or does Eric?
Eric, you had a couple more that were on your list. So if you'd like to.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want, because Marcia mentioned that her Haggadah is published by the Jewish Publication Society. And I wanted to acknowledge that Barry Schwartz, who's the head of that press, is on on the call. Barry, at the risk of putting you on the spot, do you want to share some of your own thoughts about the Haggadah, because you've been with it for a long time?
Thank you very much. And I just want to thank Marcia as the author and the Kaplan Center as a partner in bringing this about. This is a distinguished addition to the long list of the Jewish Publication Society. And I am very glad to report that this is one of the fastest and best-selling launches in recent history of JPS. So kol hakavod, and thank you to everybody who has been involved.
Thanks, Barry.
All right, so I do just have one question that I'll ask, and then we can, as we often do in our Kaplan Center webinars, I'll kind of open it up for just people could unmute themselves and ask things that they didn't put in the chat. I think one of the interesting parts of your Haggadah, Marcia, is what you did with the Birkat HaMazon, because the Birkat HaMazon is a very long piece of liturgy, and it has, in addition to the parts that I learned in Solomon Schechter, it has all the Harachaman section, and in your version, and just for brevity, I'll just read the English translation of what you wrote. So you start off with a quote from Vayikra: "The earth will yield its fruit, and you shall eat your fill and dwell securely on the land." And then you have, "Grateful for the riches of the good giving earth, we will tend the earth's gifts that they may flourish and seek sustenance for all who dwell here with us." So the full Birkat HaMazon has, passages concerning the land of Israel. It has a blessing specific to the people sitting around the table. And I'm wondering if your vision for the Birkat HaMazon was always streamlined in this particular way, or you attempted different versions that tried to line up more with the traditional text, but decided that that it just didn't speak to you.
No, actually, my first Birkat HaMazon appeared in the Book of Blessings back in 1996. And I must say that children love my Birkat HaMazon, right? Because it's like 10 words instead of 1,000. It was very popular that I wrote such a compact Birkat HaMazon. But actually, and it's morphed. The one that's in the Haggadah is not exactly the same as the one that was originally in Book of Blessings, but it was based on the 3 core blessings of the traditional Birkat HaMazon. And all of those 3 elements are in there. But it would be, so again, Eric, as you know, I always start with the tradition, whatever is there that I can use and that I feel is worth preserving and bringing to light and embellishing, or, in this case, also slimming down, I do. And that's what I did with Birkat HaMazon. I went back to the 3 core brachot in Birkat HaMazon, and I wrote like a little couplet, one for each. And the rest of the stuff. Look, I mean, part of my aesthetic, as you noted, is spareness. I am someone who thinks less is more a lot of the time for a lot of things, for my artwork and for my poetry, and and that definitely for my liturgy, because I think one of the big problems with our liturgy is that there's too much stuff. I mean, pick up the machzor for the Yamim Noraim. Oh my God! And we go through that every year. It's just too much. How can we pay attention? How can we bring our own hearts and minds to it? There's no quiet. There's no silence. It's just noise, noise, noise. Words, words, words. I mean, even though I'm a poet, I don't I don't trust words to be the ultimate everything. We need pauses. We need white space around the black ink. And that's what I try to do in my poetry and what I try to do in my brachot. So yeah, it is much shorter than the traditional.
Eric, if I may, I have a comment and a deep appreciation. This is Jeffrey Shine, Eric's partner and the co-director of the center. I've been thinking through this whole wonderful presentation of the Midrash about King Solomon, that he writes different books at different stages of his life. And I am just so aware that as a young 22-year-old, I needed all the bile, the anger, the fire of Arthur Waskow's the Freedom Seder, his new Haggadah. And I think it's both my age, but also where we are after these several very difficult years that appreciates, Marcia, I've renamed you the sweet singer of Israel with an echo, of course, of King David. But I do mean that there's something, and I've been sending out your Haggadot to our supporters, and I've been getting notes back, and they often are, it's so soothing and spiritual and calming in a time where we need that. So I think it's 8 Ratzon. We've published the right year to have this Haggadah come out.
Well, we all need that now, don't we? We just need it so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have to say, you know, Jeffrey, that's what comes out of me when I write. There are close friends who tell me I have 2 different personalities, one in real life and one in my poems. And they're both parts of me. But, you know, I don't tend to be an optimistic person in real life. But somehow when I write, these feelings of hope and this love of beauty, I mean, that's what it's all about for me. So yeah, but thank you for saying that. I love Sweet Singer of Israel. My God, would you put that on my webpage? You know, Jeffrey says, no, put it on Facebook, put it everywhere. Marcia Falk is the Sweet Singer of Israel. I love it.
Oh, there you go. I kind of feel almost on one side that that should be the last thing that we say because it's such a gorgeous way of closing off. But I want to give people who haven't put anything in the chat but might have something on their minds that they would like to, to ask Marcia or to put out there, if they want to unmute themselves and to say something. And you'll have to unmute yourselves because we're still a large number and I'm only seeing a small number of you. So
people could use that reactions thing at the bottom. And
that's true. That's true. If you put your hands up in the little yellow thing, as I see Joan is doing. So Joan, what's on your mind?
I'm particularly thinking now about Ukraine, but I'm thinking about all sorts of times in Jewish history. And so I guess this is also addressed to Mel, because I understand your reason for not including, I think I do, Marcia, for not including Shvach. But I was wondering what Kaplan's view would have been now on Shvach. What Mel, what do you imagine, or any of you, Eric, what would Kaplan do with it?
Well, he eliminated it.
Kaplan, but Mordechai.
He eliminated it. It's not in the new Haggadah.
You think he would
He
still
not only
feel
eliminated it, but it may be the primary reason why he was excommunicated. In other words, the excommunication comes in 1945, but it's only a month after the prayer book was published, and the Haredim were steaming for 4 years about eliminating the Shvach HaMatcha. They were very, very upset. And in 1945, with the concentration camps and so on and so forth, you might say that emotionally it was needed in a certain sense by everybody. It was a very difficult time. So it's a major aspect of, the 1945 prayer book.
Actually, you're right, Mel, because I remember having discussions with friends, especially while I was in rabbinical school, about the struggle of, I have Kaplan's original Haggadah, several copies. So, and then there's the newer one, about exactly that, about, the question of Kaplan, and then did he deal enough with that subject? That was a question that came up a lot between me and other students. So, Kaplan had to do what he needed to do. He had to have his perspective, which I loved, or I wouldn't have gone to RRC. His philosophy fit me to a great deal, but that was one area in which I was troubled.
Kaplan was majorly concerned with the evils of nationalism and with chauvinism. And that figures in the diary in a very, very, very strong way about his concern with exaggerated nationalism.
Right.
So I think that needs to be part of the whole picture.
Right. That's good.
Carol, if you, thank you, John. Carol, if you unmute yourself and.
Thanks. I just had a couple of questions. I'm looking forward to looking at the whole book, Marcia. It so far sounds really beautiful, and I would say meditative. When you initially read the Yachats, I think, section in the beginning and talked about brokenness, the way it reads, what came to my mind was the Buddhist understanding of suffering, and that the brokenness to me read as suffering. And I was wondering if, on the one hand, number one, if that concept, that way of thinking is part of what entered your way of thinking about this. And my other two questions are, did you look at other specific Haggadahs? Which ones may have influenced how you otherwise decided to choose what to do with this, separate from the idea that, of course, was around it about looking at the whole of Exodus. And my last question was about the leaving out of the other women's names of Pharaoh's daughter and Moses' mother. And my memory, I know I think Rabbinic Midrash or others have posited names. So I was wondering why you seem to be not including those, why you didn't include those or just left them for us to deal with. So thank you.
Wait a minute. Are you too many questions? Okay, wait. The second question is the easy one. That was, did I consult other Haggadot? And the answer is yes, like dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds. So that's the easy question. What was the first question?
The brokenness as the Buddhist.
Brokenness in Buddhism. Well, I don't know all that much about Buddhism, but from what I understand, suffering is about attachment. It's a different concept from brokenness. From my idea of brokenness, it's a whole other sort of philosophy. So even though there are things about Buddhism that I can relate to, I didn't think of it at all in this context. I started out with the image of actually breaking the matzah and what that became a metaphor for. The third thing about the women, as I say, I did not change the biblical text at all. Maybe I didn't make that clear enough. God in my Magid is God. He's a male, he's he, as is Pharaoh. They are characters in a story, okay? And these two characters, I don't change them. I present them as they are, because we have to grapple with our foundational texts. We have to know what they actually said, and then we can build upon it, argue with it, but we have to preserve it and we have to keep it intact. That's my feeling about our foundational texts, like Tanakh. Okay, so I didn't insert into the story names of women that weren't there. I comment on the fact that those names are not there in my commentary. So I wasn't changing the story enough to put in one of the rabbis' names for Bat Paro, because that's bringing in a whole other generation a whole other story, what the rabbis have to say, right? So I'm not doing that in this. That would be a great study of these chapters, but in a sense, it's kind of what the traditional Haggadah touches on, what the rabbis have to say. And I was trying to stick to Tanakh and my own literary investigation of the story. So I hope, Carol, I answered all your questions. I'm not sure I did. But
No, you did. You definitely did. Sharon?
Hey, Marcia.
I
I am wondering, I want to come to your house for the Seder and I want to know what are we singing? How are we singing? And and am I bringing another Haggadah with me for those songs? Or
there are some songs in my Haggadah at the back, right after Hashanah Ba B'Yerushalayim. Then I have all the songs. I mean, not all the songs, because there's, a lot, and I didn't want to take up that much space because I wasn't changing them in any way. So I figured, well, you could just find them in any other Haggadah. But yeah, I mean, my favorite one, Sharon, is Karev Yom, Asher Hu Lo Yom B'Olam. I just think that's such a beautiful melody. And you are invited to any Seder. I do. Haven't done one in a few years because of COVID. And you bring all the songs you want and bring your own wonderful intelligence and curiosity. And I'll be delighted to have you here.
so let me just ask you a question. How do you envision us using this? Do you envision us using just your Haggadah, or is it, are we all sitting with several Haggadot?
They always ask me that question about the Book of Blessings. It's going to be used how it's going to be used. My ideal never came to be really with the Book of Blessings, So my ideal is obviously that people would use it as a whole and see it as a theological piece, and see what happens, see how it works. But I know what people do. I'm no idiot. I'm not naive.
I'll just going to chime in for a second to say, in terms of the song, so there's Chad Gadya in its entirety, there's Echad Miodea in its entirety, and there's Adir Hu is as well. So, and as you saw, there's Dayenu, although not all the verses.
Because who reads all the verses, I mean, nobody does unless, if you're super Orthodox and want to do the whole Seder, but most people don't sing all 13 verses of Dayenu.
Yeah, and also Marcia divides the Hallel into two pieces, and the first piece is kind of more experimental in the sense it's got more new material, but the second one, the second piece of it, I was struck by how she really included all of the segments from the traditional texts that I think are most sung. So I think that the book is definitely a book that can be used, for people who want to have a singing Seder. There is a lot of text, but it doesn't all have to be read, just like you can make your way around it, but it's definitely I think could be used on its own by anybody who wish to do so.
Eric, I saw a hand up that went away, but I would love to hear from her, and that's
Rachel. I saw Rachel.
Putting you on the spot again, Rachel.
Can I just come back for a second, Marcia? I'm a little confused about the not naming of the women because Yocheved is in Exodus. So I'm a little confused, that's all. I'm just trying to understand because I don't have the book in front of me I understand the anger and everything else, but just in terms of text, I don't understand why you're saying Moses' mother is not named when she is.
She's not named in these 15 chapters.
In the 15 that you looked, I see.
In the Exodus story.
And in the Exodus story itself.
In this story, that we read on Pesach.
First of all, I thank you. It was wonderful and interesting, and I'm waiting to have my own copy. but I just wanted to say that Yocheved is pretty well known, and the name is used and repeated and connected to Moses's mother. So that was a comment that I didn't get myself. I understand about Bat Paro, but I never understood why you said that Moses's mother was not named.
Okay, but I really was referring to this story. We hear about her later. If I am, am I
Well,
mistaken?
yeah, well, I think it has to do with just, if I can again chime in, it really has to do with the passages, Marcia, that you chose to include, because as it's been pointed out in the chat, in chapter 6 of Shmot, verse 20, is Amram married his father's sisters, Yocheved, who bore him Aaron and Moses. Amram lived 137 years. But that's just not one of the passages that's not one of the pieces that you're including. That's all.
Well, mea
think
culpa, and I will make the correction in the next edition. Thank you all.
I think if I can come to Marcia's defense, I want to talk about the whole issue of naming. We spend our whole lives acquiring a name, and the meaning of the name, excuse me, and the rabbis were very, very sensitive to those people who were not named in the Torah, and they give them names, which is in a certain sense what Marcia is doing. For example, the advisors to Pharaoh are not named, and the Midrash says that one was Jethro and one was Job, and so on and so forth. So the matter of naming and using that, and those that are not named, is a key factor in the Torah.
All right, so I don't see anybody else's hands up. Is somebody have something that they want to say before I bring the session to a close?
If I can venture a question, I feel Marcia and I are so close that she won't mind that there's a criticism involved, but it's really a question, and that has to do with the 4 children. The Chacham is a she, and the Rasha is a he. Was that?
Then the next one is a they. I'm trying to hit all the bases.
Right.
No, seriously, I'm trying to, we're talking now about people, not people in the story, but, and I wanted to use all the possible pronouns. I want to be as inclusive as possible. So I usually, he, she, they, and of course there was a 4th child, so probably repeated she, I'm not sure.
I noticed that. I noticed that they come together in they, and I was very happy about that.
Well, you know, these days they is the pronoun of choice for many people.
Yeah, as I think we've seen in these hour and 40 minutes or so that we've had the pleasure of hearing you, Marcia, and dialoguing with you, that the creation of liturgy is a lifelong project for you, that you engage in it in so many different levels, from engaging with the Bible text and finding the passages that you put in front of each one of your brachot, and
that's the best part of my Haggadah. Those epigrams.
So.
They had writers back then. All the work that had to go into all of the original poetry that is in this Haggadah, the kavanot that you wrote for the Haggadah. In addition to that, the wonderful translations of that you have from Shir HaShirim. All in all, I think that those of us who have had the pleasure of seeing the Haggadah already, and those who will choose to purchase one, I think will be blown away, to use that phrase, by all the work that you've done here. It's again, I want to encourage everybody I strongly encourage you to
purchase the Haggadah, and if you do so, to use the codes that you can use in North America until April 30th that are on the Kaplan Center website. We've also put them on all of the emails that we've sent out about Marcia's
So
Haggadah.
support your local bookstore, you know, your brick and mortar bookstore, support them. I would do that even before, just because I am so concerned for the life of our independent bookstores.
But I
Yeah,
bought
so,
mine at Barnes and Noble. I bought mine at Barnes and Noble.
all right, so really, Marcia, we're grateful for the book wherever you choose to buy it, just like they say at podcasts, or or wherever you get your podcasts. So wherever you get your books, wherever you can get your hands on Marcia's Haggadah, I think that you will be glad that you did. For those of you who will be at the Reconstructing Judaism convention, I'll be doing a session on Shabbat with Marcia again about the Haggadah. There's also sessions done by Mel Scott and Jeff Shine, and I'm doing a session on my book on Judaism and social justice, which is also going to be published by the Jewish Publication Society. And we have a table there, so I hope those of you who are at that convention will drop by and say hi. And it's really been a pleasure to host this event on behalf of the Kaplan Center, and I look forward to seeing everybody in other webinars and in other circumstances. So again, thank you for being here, and thank you, Marcia, for your wonderful presentation.
Eric and Jeffrey Shine and Mel Scult and all the wonderful people at the Kaplan Center. Thank you.